T here, and welcome to my channel. Let me dip y'all down just a touch. All right, is that better? Okay. We're doing another masking and bemoaning spooky edition. Whatever of 10. There's gonna be, we're shooting for 10 movies or shows, whatever, in conjunction with Halloween to review. So all of these are gonna be spooky Halloween horror thrillers theme, suspense. And today we're gonna be talking about what's the name of this? Black as Night. I'm opening my notes if that's why I look crazy, y'all. So you'll see me looking down. I always have my notes. It's my handwriting, don't be trying to read what I'm saying. And then I have my, my template of my 9 questions to make this more efficient. Your girl been working on what? Efficiency. All right, and before we get into it, remember to thumbs up, like, and subscribe, especially if you are a movie enthusiast. Also, this is a beauty channel, so we'll have those things up at some point in time. But I wanted to do this because it's Halloween, and I don't really do FX looks. I do them on other people. I am also a freelance makeup artist, but for yourself, your girl kind of looks like this all the time. This is a gentle beat. I'll list everything I have on my face, in the description box. So, the only thing that we're discussing today is called Black as Night. It is a movie that is on Amazon Prime in their collaboration with Blumhouse. It is an hour and 28 minutes, so it's a quick watch. There's only one familiar face in this, and that is Keith David, who is, let's give him his flowers now, our villainous man, who every time I see him, even he's usually playing someone bad. We know him from things such as Barbershop. We know him as the voice of and he was the villain in Barbershop. We know him from Princess and the Frog. He voiced, the voodoo man whose name I can't recall right now. For whatever reason, I see him in my mind's eye. But he was the villain. Yes, and then he's a complex character on Greenleaf. And I won't necessarily say he's a villain. I was like, but he's villainous, but he is not alone in his villainy. Such as this as well, actually. Okay. So the gist of this, and this cast is predominantly black, so that's a fun thing. I was excited to see that this is basically a black vampire movie. But yeah, a teenage girl, her name is Shauna, she's our main character, and she is also the narrator, with self-esteem issues, finds confidence in the most unlikely way by spending her summer battling vampires that prey on New Orleans disenfranchised with the help of her best friend, Pedro. He is her Mexican gay best friend. We can talk about that trope at another time. But yes, also not white. The boy she's always pined for, Chris, and a peculiar rich girl whose name I don't remember because she doesn't really help. I mean, she comes in at the kind of the 10th hour, but and that's like our only white character, and she's cool, but she runs like a vampire enthusiast club. Like, she meets in an old church with other rich white girls, and they talk about, Twilight. Of course, Anne Rice. Oh, I was about to call her Anne Frank. Anne Rice, Lestat de Leoncon. It's spelled like lion court. I don't feel like I'm saying it right. De Leoncon. Okay, but that's not here. We're not talking about Lestat. Y'all see that they're doing a Lestat movie or a show supposed to be coming up? I love Lestat. I just feel like he was never done right. If you are not familiar with Lestat, that's the Anne Rice character. You'll see him with in Interview with the Vampire, which Tom Cruise did a great job as him. But anywho, back to this with unknown people. Okay, so Shauna, what her insecurity is about is because she's dark skinned. And of course, this made me, for a moment, I was rolling my eyes at some point. It was just like, oh, I'm just so beat down. No one likes me because I'm not Creole. Although Creoles can be dark skinned. But Y'all can argue about that in the comments, because that's more of a culture, just like white people. Apparently white people can be Creoles too. And then there's also a group of people who, you know, who marry, mostly when we think about Creole people, this would be the gist of it. Of course, your famous Creoles, Miss Tina is Creole Giselle from the Housewives of Potomac, famously Creole, light skin, green eyes, so all kind of look same-ish. Although I will say that a lot of, and not necessarily this season, but in seasons past, a lot of those housewives look swirly, even though not all of them are necessarily Creole, but you know, that kind of phenotype. But those people are not swirly, they are actually black. But there was, you know, people that would marry each other to stay basically light-skinned. That's not a specifically Creole thing. There are other groups of people, like in my family, I'm not a good example, but I also have a father who's not that, but I'm mostly on my mother's side. And I don't feel like there's a current issue in the family, but maybe like when my mother was a child, so I would say her grandparents, let's say that. And though it's never said, but no, she even told me an instance of something that like her mom, my grandmother, said to her, because my daddy is dark, but you know, so she did not initially like him for that. Like, and my dad's from Alabama, and that whole side of the family is dark, but there was people, and then my mom is you know, light, even though she's in, but she's not as light as some of the other cousins. So yeah, like I'm saying, it's not a current issue, and it's not an issue between them, but just the way like that grandmother would kind of treat them. They feel like they weren't treated the same way, because I do have other cousins who are, you know, as brown as me, who, you know, were not as light as other cousins. So something that has gone on for centuries, you know, back tests, blue vein societies, it's an issue. All the girls in Shauna's mind only get on the dance team if they are light-skinned / Creole, so that comes up, but I'm tired of seeing that as a plot point in media. Like, there's other things going on in the black community, so that's what made me roll my eyes, and that's why I'm rambling about it kind of long. So Shauna's got other stuff going on. Shauna is raised by her father. She has one brother called Jamal. And her mother's alive. Her mother's on drugs. Her mother got on drugs because we do deal with, anytime we talk about New Orleans now, we do talk about Katrina still, you know, in the background of this. But that is basically how so many people were displaced. It's how so many people had just their whole livelihoods taken away with Katrina, and still haven't recovered, never recovered. And her mom, who already maybe didn't, you know, had, some people have addictive personality, so that was already in the mix, but she basically became an addict. And that happened, like, Shauna does not remember Katrina. She was born just after, because I believe her mother was pregnant, but Jamal was born. So yeah, because she's like 16, 17. Yeah. I did also was like, oh, her mom's on drugs, come on. And again, that colorism thing, like there's even a vampire that is colorist, and I was just like, let him burn. Like, I don't care nothing about him. Let's take him right now. He was getting on my nerves. I was like, do you want this blood or not? Because he literally says when they go undercover to discover that, is that, he's like, I usually don't like my girls die. Are you hungry? Are you not hungry, sir? Only thing you need to be caring about is red or blue, because it's blood, because before blood hits oxygen, it's blue. But anywho, that's the only thing you need to be caring about. Like, really? That's what we doing? I say, you die right now. Okay, so anywho, yeah, so the other background of it is that Keith David, we see him protesting because there is a housing project that is that's one of the few there, so how basically they're trying to shut it down because they want to move it, of course, for more developments and more build up, which that happened, you know, as soon as Katrina, they'll take it. That happens even here in Tennessee, you know, anytime there's any disaster, they can move it out, especially areas like in the bigger cities, you know, your Nashville, your Memphis, or whatever, there's any kind of natural disasters, mostly in our case, and Katrina's case, that they would use that opportunity to try to develop that to be a more attractive area to richer, whiter people, and move disenfranchised many of the times it's black in here in Tennessee, like I was saying, and in New Orleans post Katrina, it is mainly, you know, poor black people. So the only place that's still holding on is this housing project, because people literally lost everything, and this is kind of where some of them can only go. And then, you know, of course, it's a lot of addicts and poor people. So all that's that. So the first time we actually see Keith David, he is outside protesting because they want to shut this place down. But yeah, her mom gets turned into a vampire because it turns out that Keith David, under the guise of protest, I mean, it's not the guise, he means it, when you see his backstory, because it turns out he is in fact a vampire. He's a day walker, because one of the interesting lore elements of this is that the darker you are, the more protection from the sun that you have. That only even though her mother is dark skinned, she's a new vamp, so she does not develop the immunity from the sun. So that's what basically happens. She burns up in the sun, or she literally catches fire and burns up in the sun. But they were like, after, you know, a year or so of that, the darker you are, the more immune you are. So really only white vampires and very light vampires have to worry about the sun. They was like, over time you just build up immunity to it, and honestly your melanin is your protection. So that's why you actually see Keith David's character walking around in the sun. There's also another coven of vampires who are namely Africans. So that's an interesting part too. I was like, is that a nationality divide? Because there's always something going on about, you know, there's always this diasporic wars, you know, because we are not always the same. We're not the same kind of black, and it's fine. But I was like, I don't always want to get into it, and then someone says something, people talk about xenophobia, blah 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 blah. I'm like, y'all learned a new word, and here we go. But yes, we're not all the same kind of black. That is what it is. So yeah, but basically they don't agree with Keith David's stand, because basically he's like a vampire, a black disenfranchised vampire supremacist. Because the interesting story background of him is that he was actually turned into a vampire as a slave, and his cousin lives in the mansion, which was formerly a plantation. So he's on the same plantation where he was on, and he believes, and he takes the vampires that are, you know, the black and disenfranchised, he takes those people and makes them vampires. So one, you get the immortality, one, this is the way that he thinks to go about helping black people rise up against their station. Because it seems like his thing is like, we can all run all of this. We can all turn, and we can take our power back as people, and by doing that, by being vampires, and make everybody else, you know, beneath us. But that's how we can rise above our station as vampires. It's not a bad thing. So I can see where he's coming from. I was like, I can't really, you know, the other African slave who was older or just as old as Keith David's character, he has a point too, because they're both very old. So, you know, Keith David's character is at least 200 years old. So, you know, he was just so he deals with things. He'll have a different vision than some of the newer vamps. So he's been through all of that, but so has the guy that's the leader of the coven. So I was like, I do like that, y'all. That it's not like there's different covens and clusters of vampires who everyone kind of has their own thing. So that's going underneath. It is interesting that, you know, and Shauna, she figures this out after she goes to visit her mom. So she just is pulled into this world of this whole underground thing that's happening during the city. And it's interesting that's taking place in New Orleans, because it's like if you go to New Orleans, it's always kind of tours about voodoo and vampirisms and supernatural and this, that, and the third. So I was like, this is a good setup, how they tied everything together. Yeah. So I did like that. Let's see. Yeah, and that's basically it. I mean, they get also there are, it's just like the lore is very interesting on this. Okay, so that's the gist. I know that kind of sounded all over the place, but that's me trying to sum it up. I'm giving you some stuff but not spoiling everything. There's staking, there is garlic being used. Silver is not an issue. Silver is an issue, but it's not like it doesn't kill them. That's just how it keeps them bound. But you know, garlic kind of has the same effect. I do like that the kids, they get just like, you know, powdered like garlic powder, which is just powdered garlic to like get the vampires away from them. Like I like that the kids are still kids. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, is this family friendly? No, it is 16 plus. But that's mainly because there's some sexual innuendo or just straight up things in your face. Like at one point, Shauna goes undercover, you know, to get access to the vampire plantation. And that's where we run into our colorist vampire, who everyone thought was the main cheese, but it wasn't him. I was like, he can go. You know, so she literally goes undercover as a prostitute because that's how he was getting feds. But they would come out, so they like, their whole thing is that they don't kill, they get enough blood, like you don't have to kill anybody. And even the African vampire was like, you know, even to drink straight from the source, we don't have to harm humans anymore. But you know, part of the issue is that, you know, Keith David's character don't care about that. He is just like, it's like he's being sloppy, and he doesn't have to, and he doesn't have to eat as often because he's so old. So there's that. Yes, always something sexual, especially even when they talk about, you know, Chris and how he's great and, you know, sexy teenage times, which makes me uncomfortable. Like the children, and I know children are doing these things, but you know, come on. You know, and language, yeah, they be cussing. Although there's violence, but it's not super graphic, so that's the other two. So yeah, so proceed at your own risk. How scary is this on a scale of 1 to 5 spooky scary skeletons? Personally, it's a 1 because it's not scary, but it is campy. There's no jump scares. Like, it has fun with itself, so I don't actually mind it. And I actually like the fang prosthetics on this because I like, instead of just having a singular fang, it's like their whole mouth is done up and pointing like that. So that's interesting. Like, you need all those pointy teeth. You see how dogs' teeth look. Dogs don't just have this is flat with the 2 fangs. They need all those teeth busting through some meat, you know, if you're gonna be doing that. Okay, is it a good movie? I originally gave it a C, but I will say it's a B because it's enjoyable. No, I'm still gonna keep it a C plus though, because it's enjoyable. It's fun, but it's not like deep. It's not this whole thing, and I didn't necessarily enjoy the narration. I could do without narration and stuff. Like, I'm the kind of person, like, I was watching Goodfellas and it got on my nerves with the narration. I was like, we watching it, why do I need a narration? That's all I'm saying. And even though that's Martin Scorsese's style, but that narration, I was like, okay. You know, that's just how I feel. Rewatch value for me, it is low, because after you figure out what's going on, that's kind of it. And like I said, this ain't The Sixth Sense. You're not missing a bunch of things. It's not tricky. It's a straightforward movie, but it's fun. But I will say, if someone who hasn't seen it wants to watch it and they put it on, I'm not going to leave the room, or I'm not going to be like, because sometimes when people want to watch it, I had that with a friend recently, like when we watched, they wanted to watch Spell. I just went and like cleaned up the kitchen instead of sitting and watching that goofy movie again. But I would watch this again. Like, it's goofy, it's fun, it's a good time. The kids are still kids. So yeah, low for me, but it is worth you watching. I think it's a good time, it's a fun time. All right, final questions. This is my thing, and I'm not really gonna get into it. It's not really a question, it's a statement. It said, I would love to have a horror movie where race and class is not the main villain. That's on trend right now. It's like ever since Get Out. And now before you come in the comments and be like, well, it's always been that way. I mean, Night of the Living Dead is about racism. I get that. But sometimes I just want the monster to be the monster. And even that, it's not like in your face with it. Like, okay, we know you black. We know we got colorism, this, that. I was like, sometimes we know about class. I was like, sometimes I just want it to be, you know, the monster to be the monster. I don't necessarily need social commentary. At least not so heavy-handed. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. And I will actually say that's something I've been noticing with the Blumhouse stuff. Cause yeah, a lot of it's social commentary. And I was like, I just wanna, you know, see a horror movie sometimes. All right. So tell me how you felt about it. Are you wanting to see another black vamp movie, more black horror films that are not just straight up goofy, or black exploitation, or where the enemy is not also race, and that's in all over the genre with anything to deal with black people, because we can't just exist. Yeah. So thanks for watching. You know, let's talk about it, battle it out in the comments. Thanks for watching. My name is Nessie. Love you guys. Bye.